Um, so welcome to Dharma in Pyjamas. I'm in my pyjamas, as you can probably tell, with my bed hair. Actually in bed, which is called a bed, but it's actually my office. I have all my papers spread out everywhere. There's just enough room for me and the cat. Eddie has to go sleep on the lounge. There's no room. Sorry, I'm at work. And so this morning for Dharma in Pyjamas, the topic is how coronavirus reveals the truth. And this whole situation, I mean, it just blows my mind, and it probably blows your mind too. And I think the fact that it has kind of felt like our whole world has been turned upside down actually reveals a couple of things to us. One is that we haven't grasped impermanence and what that actually means in practice. And the other thing that it reveals is that we haven't actually recognized the enormous amount of merit that we have either. So we haven't grasped merit. So, you know, we're probably going along before the coronavirus hit thinking, oh, you know, maybe samsara will turn out okay. Maybe it'll work out okay after all. Clearly those hopes are a little dashed, but that's a good thing. So let's set our motivation for this morning. A nice colloquial way to set our motivation is to think that we're here with sincerity and intelligence. So the sincerity, you know, it's like the two wings of the bird. So the sincerity is that we're here with a good heart, with an intention to help ourselves and to help others in the very best possible way, with that kind of real warm-heartedness. And intelligence, to use our wisdom, to use all of our natural kind of cynicism and our discriminating awareness and all of that to really be able to develop our wisdom. So yes, how coronavirus reveals the truth. And we're all thinking or feeling that our world has been turned upside down, but actually in a way it's always been like this. So I actually wanted to start with a quote from C.S. Lewis, who, you know, the incredible author of Lion, Witch of the Wardrobe, and we've probably just walked through the wardrobe now into this alternate reality, isn't it? So this is what he said in 1939 at Oxford University in the midst of a very different global crisis. It wasn't the case, he pointed out, that the outbreak of war had rendered human life suddenly fragile. Rather, it was that people were suddenly realizing it had always been. The war creates no absolutely new situation, C.S. Lewis said. It simply aggravates the permanent human situation so that we can no longer ignore it. Human life has always been lived on the edge of a precipice. We are mistaken when we compare war with normal life. Life has never been normal. So how amazing. I mean, what an insight. So the person who's writing this article, Oliver Berkman, says, in this time of acute collective anxiety, this sort of anxiety might not bring much peace of mind. This kind of insight might not bring much peace of mind on its own, but it's a crucial first step because it suggests that something about our gut-churning feelings of helplessness, the sense that we're facing an absolutely horrible, unprecedented emergency, which will surely lack the personal resilience to cope with, it's not wholly accurate. And it implies that we might be much better to think at dealing with radical uncertainty because, in fact, every hour of every day we already do. The trouble with uncertainty is that it's a doorway to infinity. When you have no idea what tomorrow will bring, it's easy to fill that gap with fantasy, and the world of fantasy knows no bounds. It's actually possible to imagine things getting limitlessly bad. So C.S. Lewis saying, you know, that human life has always been lived on the edge of a precipice. And so I was thinking, particularly with the coronavirus, how it reveals the truth. And one of the truths that it reveals is the 6 sufferings. And so they're these particular sufferings that are quite specific to the human realm. They're kind of like a universal experience that we all go through. And I thought I'd kind of share them with you and go through how they relate to the coronavirus and how actually it can reveal the truth, and that can help us. So the 6 sufferings: uncertainty, dissatisfaction, that we die again and again, that we have to take rebirth repeatedly, the highs and the lows, and loneliness. So uncertainty, I mean, that's the really big thing that we are experiencing at the moment. And like C.S. Lewis said, it's not that suddenly things are uncertain. The coronavirus has revealed the actual nature of our existence that we've been able to be in denial about for so long, because we, the lucky ones, have been able to kind of adjust our life. So I was thinking today about how we get so unsettled with this constant news cycle, and how we're kind of addicted to the news cycle, and yet it just makes us more and more miserable. And why the misery comes is because in listening to the news, we're craving for certainty. We want an answer. We want to know how to fix it. We want to know when it's going to end. We want to know what's going to happen. We want something solid, certain, that we can rely on. And this is like this deep unconscious craving that we have. And so then we, you know, look at the news and we talk to people and we think about it all, and we can't find that certainty that we're craving. And that's what creates the angst. So when human beings experience a lack of control, this is really debilitating. If we don't know that's what's happening. One of the things that we do when we experience a lack of control is just grasp at anything, including a fantasy, to make us feel better. And that fantasy may actually be quite detrimental to us in the long term. So one of the things about living with uncertainty, or radical uncertainty, is to stop our wheels spinning in a way, is to figure out how to tolerate uncertainty. Or, I mean, this is what resilience is, isn't it? And one way to do that is just to not try to get rid of the uncertainty, to recognize it for what it is, that is our actual human situation. So in that article, there was a little bit here. The overarching strategy for dealing with the experience of intense uncertainty is to do whatever you can to bring yourself back to the world of the finite, to things as they actually are in our own concrete world, and the concrete things you can control. And as a first step, try not to see anxious feelings as something that you've got to get rid of. It's actually our mission to tolerate uncertainty rather than having to make it go away. So that creates a different frame for thinking about things. All you have to do is tolerate it. It may be difficult, it might take energy, but it will get us out of this place where we're spinning our wheels, trying to fix something that actually isn't within our power to fix. And I'd add, it is in our power to fix, but not in that way. So that's the first one, the uncertainty. I'm just going to look at the chat here. So yes, Robin, I'll be able to send a link of the article. It's a really good one. So the next suffering, the suffering of dissatisfaction, and this one of, you know, always what we have, it's never enough. It's never good enough. And that again is being revealed to us. It's not that the coronavirus and being stuck at home, not able to go out, has made us dissatisfied. It's shown us that we live in a state of dissatisfaction, and all the time we're restless, restless, restless. And most of the time in our culture, we just go out shopping, don't we? And the moment we can't go shopping, oh my God, what am I going to do now? So then, you spend your whole life going to work and supporting family and trying to have a nice house and all of these things. And then, oh my God, now I have to spend time in my house with my family. What am I going to do? So this constant, I suppose the cliche is looking at the glass half empty instead of half full, so that whatever we have at the moment isn't what we want. And we get stuck with fixating on those outside things, thinking they're the problem. But actually it's our contrariness, it's our dissatisfaction that means doesn't matter what's in front of us, we're not happy. One of the things that Thupten Chodron pointed out about this particular suffering is that we're raised to be dissatisfied. We're raised, all the advertising, our whole consumerist culture is based on dissatisfaction. So not being able to be such an active consumer anymore has really thrown us back on ourselves to reveal this is actually a truth that not all of us can actually be consumers. In fact, we're kind of at the pinnacle of samsara. Most of the world, has been going through this for millennia. We just didn't notice because it didn't happen to us. So with that dissatisfaction, the thing about that is that we're trying to find our satisfaction from outside, but it's inside that's dissatisfied. So it doesn't matter what we get. If we can't actually deal with our inside environment, we won't get that satisfaction we want. Okay, then the third one, that we die again and again, and the fourth, that we take rebirth repeatedly. So in the Buddhist context, this one, dying again and again, we have to repeatedly leave this life and this body, and we're always separated from these things that we worked so hard for. And this is really kind of brought to the fore too with coronavirus, that it's the great leveler, isn't it? It doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor. There is no discrimination. The coronavirus doesn't discriminate. And so here we are faced with a very real possibility that the life we have now may come to an end quite soon. Kind of stepping back a bit from that, we've also have to release our identity, our role at work. So in a way, it's like a psychological death or an identity death, that before we used to put on a suit and go out and feel important and, look all together, doing grown-upping, doing adulting. So we had to leave that behind, leave that identity behind, change roles. So that constant kind of pain of loss, of losing our sense of self and identity, because so much of it was based on external things. It was very circumstantial. And while we could control the circumstances, we thought everything was sweet. Now we can't control the circumstances. We get the truth revealed. The other one, the number 4, taking rebirth repeatedly, means that the suffering of that is that we always have to learn new things. So, when we're born, we have to learn how to eat and wash ourselves and walk and talk and read and all of those things that take a lot of energy. And luckily, when we're little, we have a lot of energy. But as we get older, then, again, we've got to master how to use Zoom and how to get the audio to work and how to do all of these new things, how to get our shopping and wash it before we put it in the fridge. It's a really big learning curve for many, many people that we didn't feel ready for. So we're also learning, it's a whole new life, learning how to be in isolation, learning how to live by ourselves. Again, it's like taking birth into a new form of life, and we don't know how long this kind of lifestyle is going to go on for. Then the 5th, the highs and lows. This one I particularly like because, we strive for wanting to spend time with our family. Then we get time with our family. I was thinking of poor old Boris, you know, everything he wanted, he just wanted to be Prime Minister, didn't he? And then he got to be Prime Minister and now he's in intensive care because he shook all those hands as Prime Minister. So, you know, we strive for something, we get it, we elate it, and then crash. You know, you have a house and you sell the house at the peak of the market and invest it. And, you know, the stock market in February was at the highest in 30 years at the peak. And by March the 11th, it had the biggest crash in history. And along with that goes everybody's emotions, everybody's retirement. So the constant up and down takes huge amount of energy from us. Another high and low that I heard about was one of these, an athlete, a triathlete, and she was doing like an online race and on the exercise bike. So she's racing online with a whole lot of people and she's winning. And then she said her idiot husband unplugged the machine and so she lost. So, you know, there's a high and a low right there in the space of a few seconds. And, you know, while we rely on our circumstances for happiness, it's always going to be highs and lows. And it's not that then, oh, we find better circumstances, maybe they'll be better. It's actually just recognizing that's the nature of the beast. Right. And then the last one, loneliness. So the coronavirus has really picked this out as well, that many people are really struggling being alone, facing the bare face of their innate mind. If you haven't lived by yourself alone before, it's really challenging. It can be exhilarating, but it's hard work because you have to live with yourself, and it just shows how much inner civil war we have, how we don't live harmoniously with ourselves. We're not comfortable in our own skin. And so being at home by yourself, feeling isolated, we add to the pain of that because we've been in denial. So isolation, unhappiness in isolation shows that that we are not at peace within. So this is a good thing to know now because we don't want to have to face that when we're in intensive care. That's like we're trying to live, then we've got no time to deal with all that emotional stuff. Now is the time to look at this one in the leisure of our own home, in this incredible window of opportunity, and run some little experiments and then get online and share them with others because we can still do that. So the loneliness that we suffer alone, that, you know, we get sick alone, no one can go through it for us. We die alone, no one can go with us. And so this is really good. We're getting this incredible preparation now to be able to prepare ourselves, but also it just naturally then opens our heart to others. We get this sense of empathy. So they're the 6 sufferings, and yes, that's right, boot camp for the time of death. So now I'm going to turn to what's behind me. So this is the bed head. It's our lounge room, so it's actually the feature wall in the lounge. And why I put it together, it's inspired by a Jacques Brel poem, and the Jacques Brel poem's called My Death. And the line that really inspired me was, "My death lies there amongst the flowers, where the darkest shadow cowers." So I thought that's a really good one to remember. And so we've got the death and the flowers, and it kind of ties in with Lama Zopa Rinpoche's advice to us that I'm not sure if I mentioned it last week, but it's also particular to this, that when we're in samsara, which is very precarious and by nature has these 6 sufferings in it, to enjoy samsara like you're licking honey off a razor's edge. So I think they all go together, the death lurking amongst the flowers, and Well, Robin says sweet dreams, and it's funny, you know, I just read that as sweet screams. There's a little bit of a Freudian slip in my mind there. So here's a little bit from Thupten Chodron about that uncertainty. Because when we're talking about cyclic existence and the uncertainty in samsara and that craving for certainty, our lives being insecure, sometimes that we think of the phenomena around us as being uncertain. But cyclic existence doesn't refer to the phenomena around us. Cyclic existence, or samsara, means our 5 aggregates. It's our volition, compositional factors, our consciousness. These things, independence upon which we label an I, that is our samsara. But we don't think that. This is why we're always trying to make samsara better, because we think samsara is the external world. So I'll fix the external world. I'll move somewhere else. I'll escape from samsara and go to Hawaii and leave the computer here and my cell phone there and my beeper here, and then I'll go to Hawaii and I'll be happy. That's a total misunderstanding, because samsara is our body and mind, and that goes everywhere. Where are we going to escape from our body and mind? So thinking about uncertainty, when we meditate on this, take examples from our life. Go back through your life and look and meditate how I was seeking for certainty and security and never found it. And that's because the whole nature of this beast is uncertain. So instead of making us depressed, actually Lama Zopa Rinpoche today in the FPMT email said that if we're focusing on ourselves and our own suffering like this, we're just going to get more and more unhappy. But if we focus on others, it brings all happiness. So when we're going through these 6 sufferings in self-isolation, it's just a tiny little short step to then being able to have really genuine empathy for all living beings, that this is the nature of the beast for everybody. And your heart can open, and that brings connection. That's what makes us feel close, emotionally close, because it doesn't matter how physically close we are, we may still feel alone and isolated and alienated. So that's what brings us close, that kind of empathy. I'll just try and do a little screen share of the picture from Rinpoche. All of one's suffering comes from wishing happiness for oneself. So here we go. Look, here's Rinpoche. How amazing. And I love all sentient beings is written here on this animal. So all of our happiness comes from cherishing others. And look, the little monkey with the prayer wheel. So when we're going through this whole upheaval in our life, this is our really sincere way to develop empathy, but then from empathy to develop compassion. So empathy, when we have empathy, it's largely reactive. Something happens and we respond to it. And this is why we can have empathy burnout, and going up and down, because it's very circumstantial. It's a motivation in the moment. And we will be tossed around at the mercy of whatever our unconscious fears, hopes, and desires are, if all we rely on is empathy. It's a very reactive kind of thing. It's the start of something good, but if we just leave it at that and just feel compassion for when we notice suffering, it's really going to batter us around. It's quite short-sighted too. So what we do is we use that as a step to develop compassion, and compassion is a constant. So compassion is an attitude, and it's not circumstantial. And, as we know, compassion is the wish that others were free of suffering. So that's this wish that we have constantly, whether we're faced with suffering or not. So it's a wish that we have before coronavirus as well as after coronavirus. And within that wish that others are free of suffering, because it's a Mahayana practice, is this responsibility. And I'm the one to do it. I have to do it. I'm responsible for others' happiness and suffering. It's up to me. So we recognize we have the power and we can do something about it. So we develop this constant wish that others be free of suffering, no matter what our mood is, up or down. So that puts us in a baseline state of readiness. So we're feeling warm-hearted, we're feeling connected, and we're ready. So that if one day we get to see another human being in the flesh, we can respond really well. We don't go to pieces, we don't get frightened, we don't get all clingy, we just respond really well. It means that when we see each other online like this, as pixels of light in our light bodies, that we can respond in a really good way. So the motivation of compassion, which is this wish that others be free of suffering, and a responsibility, taking this, recognizing we have the responsibility and we have the power to do something about it, that becomes a causal motivation, and it flavors everything that we do. So there's some amazing things that have come from this. So this is the bit that we haven't grasped about our merit. So, you know, one of the things that this whole experience has brought about is that the so-called little people really matter. So Rinpoche always talks about the kindness of others, and the little people that are trodden over and, you know, never get paid properly and are looked down upon status-wise. The cleaners, the nurses, the checkout chicks, all of these people, how much do we rely upon them? Our life depends on them. So isn't that amazing? Now the whole populace is thinking like this. 2 weeks ago, that would have been unheard of. The other thing that's happened with this that's incredible for our merit is that, you know, just recently with all of our politicians just living in a fantasy land, you know, they just say something and that'll make it true. And now we're really being forced to recognize that if you don't believe in science, doesn't matter, it's still going to happen. And so, you know, all of the beliefs about trickle-down economics and about, you know, I got a good feeling about a miracle will happen and all of this, it doesn't matter. What's going to happen is reality. And now finally our politicians have stopped playing. You know, now they're thinking about reality. And that is an amazing thing. The third thing that I noticed about our merit is that one of the TV stations has this ad about we're all in this together, and that's fantastic. So we haven't got a very good heartfelt message from the government, but from the TV station, all of their stars and things, they really sincerely within their houses as human beings, you know, with a context, are sending this heartfelt message to their, you know, their audience. And yeah, sure, it's an advertising exercise, but it's also true. We are all in this together, and people do care, and that is our village, our community. That's how we, you know, grow some connection. And so that kind of supporting each other like that and being human beings instead of being important roles of people, that also is a really new thing and incredible. How amazing. But the fourth thing, the explosion of Dharma. I mean, now we're in this situation where we can be paid to be in retreat and have so much Dharma online that we don't have enough time. So I was talking to Jordan the other day, and she's like, she's doing courses all over the world. So many Dharma centers have just, like, you know, just run with it and gone all online, and so many teachings are free and really good quality. And now we can have the lamas in our lounge room every day. It's unthinkable. Not only that, but we can get paid to do it in our own home with no distractions. You know, like we're enforced to do it. It's like the ultimate retreat. And it's all been organized for us. It's just so extraordinary. So that, if you think about our merit, what we must have done to have this limitless explosion of authentic Dharma at our fingertips personally, it just boggles the mind. So I've got this other little screen share. Yes, so Judy, I saw that you came from Adelaide, which is really fantastic. Now, here's the other screen share of Tangtong Gyalpo. So this is one of the practices that Lama Zopa Rinpoche said that we should do for to help with the coronavirus. And so Tangtong Gyalpo, the Space Refuge prayer. And so I got onto Wikipedia, which was very informative about who Tangtong Gyalpo was. So a great Mahasiddha, one of those, so-called crazy yogis that taught in very unconventional ways. So I think it's very relevant for now, because what we're getting is like a wrathful teaching, aren't we? This whole experience is a wrathful teaching. It's not coming peacefully, it's coming with force. So Tangtong Gyalpo taught in unusual methods as well. And so one of the things in his hand is holding the long life vase. He lived to 125. He was able to dispel epidemics when nothing else worked. He's an emanation of Chenrezig and Hayagriva, so compassion and wrathful compassion. And in the other hand, he's holding an iron chain, because he was famous for making these iron chain bridges. And in the Middle Ages, at that time, like in Europe, the biggest a bridge was about 20 meters. Tangtong Gyalpo made 60 or 70 bridges in his life, some of them 100 meters long, out of iron chains, and there's some of them still there now in use, which is just extraordinary. So what I thought was amazing about this kind of image for us to relate to, when Rinpoche said to recite Om Mani Padme Hum many, many times whilst gazing at this image of Tangtong Gyalpo, that these iron chains, it's like the interwebs. We have the information superhighway, we have all of these Dharma connections online. It's like these incredible bridges that are being built, and they're not going to come down. Like what we're doing now online with the Dharma, it's going to stay like that. If we ever get to see each other in person again, we're still going to have online teachings. It's not going to come backwards. So we're building those bridges really strong. So I think it's just amazing that Rinpoche recommended this practice. So the chat, what does the chat say? So I'll just read this prayer. It's called the Space Refuge prayer, and it is incredible because it sums up how coronavirus reveals reality to us. And whilst the experience of us becoming aware of that might be painful, what makes it painful is our ignorance and our self-cherishing. But as we get the wisdom, it's blissful. So this is the prayer. All sentient beings equal to space go for refuge to the precious Guru Buddha. We go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. We go for refuge to the assembly of gurus, meditational deities, and dakinis. And we go for refuge to the empty clarity of our own minds, the Dharmakaya. So the Space Refuge, how extraordinary is that? Hopefully the this little chat, Dharma in Pyjamas, with how coronavirus reveals the truth. Now I'm going to try running the poll. The poll is a little bit about how we can use the 6 sufferings, what we can do about it. Oh, and I see people are voting already. How excellent. We've got 3 out of 10. So what I wanted to do was try and put this poll together to help us kind of figure out, you know, not just recognize these sufferings and get all down about it, but actually, wow, which is the one that really speaks to me that I can use right now? So the clear winners seem to be, number one, uncertainty, resilience to tolerate uncertainty. Instead of trying to control what cannot be controlled, train your mind, which I didn't write it very well, which can be tamed. And the other one, highs and lows. Do a U-turn and look within instead. There's always a silver lining.